Good morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank 1 minute at a time. I am your co-host, Hugh David.
And I'm your other co-host, Dev Sodiga. And on today's show, we're going to be looking at minute 52.
Joining us on today's show and all of this week, we have Mike of the podcast listening to Paint Dry. Welcome, Mike.
Hello, thanks guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Been good so far. Let's see what you make of the rest of the week, because some crazy avenues. But yeah, we left things off with Martin and Debbie standing in the middle of the road outside the radio station she works at, having had a semi-romantic evening, shall we say, at the Hippo Club, interrupted by drunk acquaintances, and Martin having a tete-a-tete in the bathroom with the NSA.
Just how every date needs to go.
Exactly, right? There needs to be some guy on your shoulder annoying you. These days, it'd just be on your phone, right? It'd be your mate going, "Hey, how's it going? What's going on?" But yeah, this is where we're at.
So, Mike, how did you first discover this film?
This was, I think, a Blockbuster rental. I don't. We talked about it our first attempt, and I don't think I saw this in the theater. I think this was a Blockbuster find. 1 week later, my age, I'm old, forgive me. But yeah, definitely. I'm pretty confident we found it in a Blockbuster, and it was like in when you would go in and grab 3 or 4 movies for the weekend. And this was definitely, I believe, one of those, and enjoyed it. And, it had been a long time since I'd viewed it. So I came back to it, watched it a couple weeks ago, and then have been, looked at the minute by minute analysis. Yeah, and Cusack. Well, I'm not a huge Cusack fan, and we mentioned before that my favorite Cusack movie is Better Off Dead. But this is good. I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the interactions. I kind of like this as a bit of a different character for him, and so. It's nice to seeing him in more of a serious role as opposed to, being chased by a paperboy for $2.
Yeah. I do think it's totally interesting that it's his first production as a as a producer. This is clearly one of the, he envisions himself this way.
Right.
Yes. I always find that interesting when actors become producers, whether or not they're doing it so they can have interesting projects that stretch them, or whether they're also doing it because they want to actually be a bit more them on screen, shall we say, if they've gotten into a rut or people are casting them as the same sort of character all the time.
Yeah.
You think they have a mirror conversation with themselves? Say, hey, that you delivered that line poorly. You need to go back and redo that. I know it's more director, but
I mean, now we're getting into the realms of, are you talking to me? I don't see anyone else around here.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, it does always feel like we always mention this. People always mention this and the film that he produced afterwards, High Fidelity, in a similar breath. Usually because of the soundtracks, but they're both sort of prime Cusack, right? They're like that's how both of these films are how a lot of us remember him, think of him, who came to him in the 90s, as opposed to those people who first saw him in the 80s.
Yeah. So in this minute, we kind of have this like somewhat resolution on the date. And I feel like a lot shifts here. I think it feels like Debbie kind of wakes up a little bit and is suddenly a little bit more reluctant to actually be involved with Martin again. She starts asking the Mrs. Mysterio question, which you would have assumed would have happened an hour ago when they were actually still in the Hippo Club. But obviously didn't come up then because I think they were still too busy just being enamored with each other. And now it feels like she's kind of starting to look for ways out or reasons to distance. And something about his answers don't really appeal. I think the "Are you happy?" question is the really telling one, right? Like he's kind of giving the answer that he thinks she wants to hear, but it doesn't really have any conviction behind it.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's really hard because the thing that throws me in this minute is the way she reacts to Martin's comment, "Nobody buys American anymore." And like, I can't quite figure out if it's one of those things where he's said this line not really meaning much by it, but offending Debbie with the sentiment, or if she's already like kind of thrown by his answers to previous questions.
Yeah,
because she gives a very minimal, like, minor scoff. It's not the response she was giving when he's talking about serving biscuits and gravy, right? Like it's not, she's not in on this joke. She feels like she's the butt of it and isn't super amused with it.
See, I was wondering if it's the one thing he does that reminds her of the sort of people who didn't leave here. Because it's the kind of, we saw him have this have that comment with earlier on when he was talking to Piven's character, and I just feel like, I imagine she's probably heard this for days, years at this point where she lives.
Yeah, but she's not alone, is she? Right? Piven's driving a Beamer. Bob DiStefano is a Beamer dealership. Like, nobody is buying American anymore.
No, exactly.
Like,
but the point is,
I feel like the only person who would comment on it is the guy that's not been around to see what's happened here.
True, but that's the thing, isn't it? Him saying it is a reminder, then, isn't it? Then okay, it works in a different way, but it still works in the sense of it makes him stand out, and it's the reminder to her that he's not been here.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
that case, maybe, I don't know.
And Deb, I think you bring up an interesting point too, right? That so we see in a lot of modern film, like films and TVs and stuff, characters that are the main protagonist that don't have good social skills, don't, like, kind of operate in kind of almost, I don't want to say black and white, but near black and white type things. And so his answers follow along. You can go through the list. You can go through the lead character from the Bones TV show, the female who doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, and like Numbers had there was a whole show about a group of autistic geniuses,
Yeah.
And so I feel like that, his answers and the way he answers are probably more revealing to her than he is hoping they are.
Right.
Too.
It's
You
the
know what I
Dexter
mean?
moment. Yeah. He's giving the answer expected, not his honest answer. Yeah.
Right. And his delivery is somewhat, I don't know. It doesn't,
Yeah.
You're right. There's no conviction to it. It's like, hey, let me look through my database and this is what I'm supposed to say given X question. And this is what I'm going to do. And so while he may not necessarily fully be one of those type of characters that is borderline on the spectrum,
yeah,
he's got some of those type of characteristics given the nature of his job that he has to kind of behave that way to a degree too. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think that's right. And then that plays into Hugh's point, right? Because that last comment then becomes the Hail Mary pass. Like, he sees her walking away. He sees that he kind of missed on that score. And it's the, like, what is the phrase that everybody uses? Like, what's that thing that I can inject here that will make me seem normal again? And it doesn't work either.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's, to me, isn't that what it's all about, right? It's his goal is to try to convince her that he's normal. But she, even at the beginning of it, like, I don't know, he's got a long uphill battle for sure. And so, this is definitely a roller coaster situation, right? It seems like they're lovey-dovey in the club. They've got kind of a good vibe going on. Outside the club, however, and maybe there's some deeper meaning inside the club, outside the club going on as well. He's also just had to
frame himself in a business mentality, right? Because he's just confronted the NSA agents.
Right.
He's like, I think there may have been a bit of a change in his behavior off the back of that as well.
Yeah, but also he didn't sort of, he deliberately made sure that once they were interrupted, that person interrupting him becomes, he moves things over towards her so that he doesn't have to answer the questions Debbie's been posing. It's ended in a humorous and yet deliberately unsatisfactory way because he's chosen to end it that way. And then, as you say, his mood then changes. And she is smart enough to notice both of these things.
Yeah.
She's got a good radar for this stuff.
Do we want to speak to the best 5 seconds of this minute right at the end?
Go on.
Marcella waking up to the phone ringing in my favorite office space that I want to be a realtor for, apparently. Just this sudden jerk awake, and she sat at Martin's desk. She's not sat at her desk.
She's not at her desk, yeah.
And it's got all of the classic film noir lighting going on, like to the nth degree, because it's obviously late at night. Although it actually probably isn't all that late at night because she's on the West Coast, so it's going to be like 7 or 8 o'clock maybe. But she's like clearly fallen asleep in the office waiting for a call back that she was expecting or something, I guess. And she just has this perfect like jump start awake that it's so perfect.
Yeah. And it's also one of those things where you kind of it's bringing us back to a reminder of the other plot, switching back from rom-com to the thriller aspect. And also I like the idea that she's just never leaves the office. She's just always there.
And that's definitely the point, right? I think you'd lose a lot of this character if Marcella actually, if you ever saw her outside of the office, because you never do. It's the only place she ever exists is in that office. And the last time we see her is her taking it down, not to spoil anything, but even then she's still in the office.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the thing, isn't it? It's she exists there. God only knows what she would do when she's not there.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine her like being really, really cutting it like a family dinner or something, and then suddenly like losing it completely and yelling at her sister, or something like that. Like dangerously so. While she's still got the knife in her hand from chopping something up in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is a nice moment to kind of where this minute comes to a hold, and as you say, the lighting is perfection. That really scene could be out of like 80s Mike Hammer or 60s, you name it. You can take your pick, right? And turn the color down, and boom, we're into the 50s.
It feels like that long game, right? Like the whole point that the radio station has a bunch of neon lights is just so that you can get this scene and have this scene's lighting. Yeah,
that makes sense. And it's also that idea. I mean, again, we're talking about like imagined realities. There's a sense of LA and the office being, the LA of noir times and crime fiction, and little old Grosse Pointe is, small town Midwest USA, right? And it's just, the lighting literally sets it up as much as anything.
We do get evidence in this minute that the radio station is not, in fact, a one-man show, which I thought
you can see someone in the background.
Yeah,
that was cool. Little touches like that bring everything to life properly.
Yeah,
it's not completely empty as a street. You do wonder how late it is, though, if it's that empty. But anyway, I don't know. Small towns, man.
I mean, I get the impression it's kind of like 10 o'clock, maybe. Late enough that the bar is probably the only thing open. The radio station, obviously, probably, broadcasts until like midnight, 1 a.m. or something. This was minute 52 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring your hosts, co-writers, co-producers, myself, Dev Sodiger, and my buddy Hugh David.
Today's guest was Mike of the Listening to Paint Dry podcast. Mike, where can people find you online?
Thank you guys for having me. Listening to Paint Dry is a podcast about the art and hobby of miniature painting. We are on all podcast platforms, and you can find us on Instagram at Listening to Paint Dry, as well as on Facebook and on X at Dry Listening. I know it's a great name, isn't it? Dry Listening.
I love it. It's great. So you can also find us at all good podcast players, as well as YouTube, X, and Spotify. In all cases, our handle is at Debi Radio, DEBI Radio. We also have our own website. You can come there and visit debiradio.com. Once more, as with all of those, it is DEBI Radio.
And if you want to talk with us or share your thoughts on the film or films in general, you can join us on our Facebook listeners group, which is Debi Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time.